As you guys can see, I'm not virtual. Here today, in just background, I'm the game bird ecologist with Wisconsin DNR and the chair of the game section for the Mississippi Flyway Swan Committee. And I'm going to do my best to try to talk about a lot of the work that Sumner Madison has done, and then some of the research that we're currently doing with David Wilson. So and again, very little, most of mine are pictures and video. I don't have any error bars. I'll try to get us caught up here. So first off, as you guys have heard throughout the week, trumpeter swans are eradicated in 1880s due to unregulated hunting. We had a reintroduction attempt in the 1960s that did fail. And then starting in 1989 and then through 1997, we brought eggs from Alaska. And again, Sumner Madison was there. He still works for the department. Again, kind of the godfather of swans in Wisconsin. We brought 353 eggs back over the 9 years. I know that first year, and I'll kind of show some of the pictures. Terry Kohler, who is a wealthy businessman and politician in Wisconsin, graciously volunteered his plane, and they went up there with briefcases and hot water bottles to make sure that the eggs got back at the right temperature. So it was kind of a guessing game back then. And fortunately, we had really, really good success in terms of the hatch rate of bringing those eggs back. So again, awesome that Sumner had a ton of really well documented his efforts of going up there, collecting those eggs, candling them, bringing them back. Again, it had to do it in a quick fashion to make sure that we weren't losing the viability of those eggs. And then we had this swan decoy rearing program where, similar to what folks have seen with like whooping cranes, people dressed up as swans, and we were out there just basically doing everything we could to try to make this seem like it was a realistic experience for these birds. And then after that, having the success that we did, we ended up hatching out cygnets, and we had basically adoptive parents that we would put those cygnets with that were always kind of there. And they took those cygnets and essentially reared them to adulthood and continued to do that for years. And again, extremely successful for us. Our recovery goal was 20 breeding pairs. By 2000, we were at 44 breeding pairs by 2000. In 2021, our estimated count using our survey was about 7,000 birds. And this last year, we were over 13,000. So again, compared to no birds here in 1980s to 2022 having over 13,000 birds is truly a success story. And I'll kind of show you, we've had, our birds basically are concentrated in about 4 key areas within Wisconsin. This is, we had a survey for swans prior to 2014 where we literally dropped GPS locations on every nest that we knew. And then we would go back and fly to those GPS locations to count how many birds we had, nests, how many eggs. Our first flight would be in May. We would count a nesting attempt, and then we would go back in June or July to see how many cygnets hatched. And then in September, basically how many were fledging. So I flew it in 2013 and 2014. And you can see here, we had roughly 253 nests in 2014 with the vast majority of them being in the northern half of the state, and of those in the northwestern part of the state, 20% in the northeast, 13% in that central portion, 4% as we're getting a little bit closer to Iowa, 4% along the Wisconsin River there, and then very few over on the eastern half of the state. But in 2014, we basically made the call, said we are adding almost as many nests as we had marked, and could we count these birds using our spring breeding survey? So this is again formatted similar to what the Fish and Wildlife Service's BPOP survey is. So we have 63 transects across the state, and we basically said I think we have good enough coverage on here to include trumpeter swans within this survey. And again, this is a survey that I fly, and it has worked out. I know our confidence there is a little bit less over the last couple of years, but all in all, that's a really, really good trend, and we're pretty happy to see it. So things continue to go up. So now I'm going to just touch base on a part of the project that you guys have all been hearing. David gave his presentation this morning. So Wisconsin also joined in this huge regional effort. Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, Ohio, Nebraska, Arkansas, Manitoba. We purchased 8 collars, and our Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, so our tribal entities, also purchased 2 collars because, and I'll touch base on it a little bit, is we are hearing that swans are having a significant impact on wild rice. And so part of this research was that they wanted to look at how are those birds using the landscape, especially within the ceded territory, which is basically the northern half of Wisconsin, and how are those birds utilizing traditional wild ricing areas that the tribes rely heavily on. So again, you guys have heard this now many times. We deployed collars in 2020 and 2021. They collect these GPS, GSM, Ornitella collars, collect locations every 15 minutes. For the birds that we have over 250,000 locations that have been obtained. We had 2 collars that stopped transmitting in 2021. However, we still have 7 collars going in 2022. We ran out of time to get that 10th collar out, so we gave it to Dave and had him put it, I think, on a bird in Minnesota. So we did purchase 10, but we got 9 out. Here, I'm going to try this. It's a video of us doing it on a wetland with an airboat, and I'll tell you how much more efficient that is in a second. It will zoom in. We have a 4K drone that will zoom in here that we were able to utilize to see tough. There's a swan you can see out in front of it. Right here, that was our first attempt, hoping that that one would be molting, and it clearly was not. And we said, we're going to go back to the other one. From the time we put the boat into the water to the time we caught a bird was less than 5 minutes. And again, it'll zoom in here shortly. Imagine how tough it is to zoom in on something flying like that, but it gets better. She's about a quarter mile away in our drone. First attempt, epic miss with the net. We didn't give the netter a lot of crap for it, because again, 5 minutes wasn't bad, and there it was. So our other method that we did here, this is, and I'll talk bait, this is the celebrity of this. This is 5P. I'll kind of talk on. This bird costs, I think, 2 cell phones, 1 GPS Garmin, and 1 very wet biologist right here, as she thought it was a good idea to stand up in the canoe to see over the wild rice, and it was not. But for this bird here, we had a plane in the air, 3 feet of wild rice. So we had to have a plane up there, and we had 3 canoes and 6 kayaks. In 45 minutes, we documented 4.5 miles of kayaking to try to catch this bird. So we were exhausted. So as you can see, the airboat is a much more efficient operation than the canoe and kayak, but it did work. So these were the locations that we had. Again, this is Wisconsin for those of you. I know we've kind of been doing this in Wyoming over here. We had 5P up here. We had 2 adults and a cygnet at Crex Meadows, 3 cygnets in Washera County, and then an adult in Washera County, or no, that would be Wood County. And I'll kind of just get into how some of these shook out. Our marked adults here, like I said, the celebrity 5P. It was an adult female that was captured in Iron County, as you guys have all heard, wintered near St. Louis, has now returned to Iron County and is basically within 50 kilometers of the wetland that it was captured on. And it primarily utilized the river system. So again, utilized the Wisconsin, Illinois, and Mississippi River. So again, a really good long-term migrant that we had. 0P. So this was one that we possible predation. We lost unknown fate on it. It was a male captured in Burnett County, wintered near Illinois, Indiana border. returned right back to the same exact wetland that it was captured in 2021, but then stopped transmitting last fall. So 8P here, this was an adult female that was also caught on that Crex Meadows area. It wintered locally, so it was one of those ones that it didn't really go anywhere. Washburn, Douglas, Sawyer County, so just within, probably 60, 70 miles. Then in the spring, it made this really weird migration up to nearly Thunder Bay. And I just checked, and right now it's hanging out just north of Duluth. So again, one of those that we didn't know what type of migration it would make, and the only migration we got from it at that point was all the way up north. So again, interesting. And I didn't mention it. Wisconsin was unique in that we did mark adults and cygnets, because we wanted to kind of get an idea of how the differentiate their migratory use versus kind of their staging patterns, as well as we marked 3 cygnets from a family group to see how that was gonna, how they reacted and how they behaved. So with this, our adult female captured in Wood County, that was the one in the airboat, wintered near the border of Illinois and Indiana down here, and returned again within about 60 miles or 100 kilometers from the capture site. And it was last sighted this summer, and basically in the same area. So again, we're getting good movement north and southward move. It typically been to central Illinois, or central Illinois, southern Illinois, and Indiana. And then this one has, it was an adult male captured in Burnett County. It wintered locally, didn't really go anywhere, really not much of a migratory pathward. Home range north-south was about 70 kilometers total, so hardly moved at all. Again, it spent its time right in Wisconsin and Minnesota. So you're seeing some of those movements, and I think Dave is going to get at some of that with the genetics to try to look at does this bird have more genetic stock from some of the birds out here or some of those birds in Alaska, to see if it's behaving differently because it has a different genetic stock. And again, last, it was right on the same body of water. It was resighted a bunch of times this year. And then marked juveniles, the one here, I think it's a video.
2, 3.
That's, down 4, right back to the one of those birds, it wintered in southern Illinois down in here, returned right back to the same area in 2021 and 2022. And then for those that don't know, Horicon is the largest freshwater cattail marsh this side of the Mississippi River, and it spent a bunch of time there. So again, we had a ton of photos and video that came from folks on the Horicon Marsh because it's a huge birding area. So again, interestingly to see that this cygnet had a pretty similar pathway to some of the birds that we had already marked. Same here, individual. This is out of the same family group, wintered in southern Illinois, right in the same area. You can see here. And then here, returned to the same area, Washara, then traveled just a little bit further north to Wapaka. And then it was right in the same area in last summer of 2021. We haven't had anything back from it since the summer of 2021. This bird here caused us all kinds of grief. This was one of the cygnets that people were really interested in it, and they were watching it like every minute of the day. And it tried to get up and fly with its family and hit a tree branch and fell back down in the water. And some folks immediately thought that it needed rehabbing. So they went out and they captured it. We took it to a rehabilitation center. And then they're looking through it. They're like, oh, well, we're just going to keep an eye on it. We're going to keep track of it. And then Dave's like, well, can you guys get my collar back? If it's just going to sit at a rehab center, let's put it on another bird. And then when we asked them to go get the bird got up off the rehab pond and flew away. And so then we had to call and have them turn the collar back on. And because it was then separated from the family group, it had no idea what to do. It just spun around in circles, flew all over, tried to fly across Lake Michigan, said, nope, we're not going to do that. And then ended up over in Ohio. So again, a completely different pattern from these two out of the same exact family. But as you can see, when it doesn't have kind of a family group to go with, it was an interesting pattern that it chose to. but it wintered down in Indiana and Ohio and has come back and is now just a little northeast of where we caught it from before. And then 4P here, this is a juvenile male that was caught in that Crex Meadows where we had two adults from, wintered down here in Illinois and Indiana where we had a couple other birds winter. And then that one migrated all the way up to Lake Winnipeg in Manitoba, and now it's back in Burnett County. So again, interestingly, it overflew its our initial area and flew all the way up into Manitoba, and then ended up coming back down. So just kind of pulling everything together, just the study allows us, preferred habitat, flight path, site fidelity. We're really looking forward to the stuff on genetics so we can get an idea of why some of our birds behave the way they did. It has given us some insight into how important it is to be part of those family groups. So those birds do know they learn from their family on where to go. And if you don't have that, they're still figuring out migration, but it took a little bit more effort to do so. And this has been a huge education and outreach opportunity for us. We had people from the International Crane Foundation. We had, again, the tribal interest from Glyphwick come together on this. It was a really huge effort. So additional research, like I said, we're looking at the genetic stuff. We want to get into the brooding habitat and use behavior, differential habitat use by adults and cygnets. And as I said, this is something that's going on right now in partnership with the DNR staff and the tribes. This is a wild rice enclosure on that body of water where we caught those birds using the airplane. Last year we had 150 non-breeding adults on that body of water, and it's a huge wild rice area. And by the end of the summer, there was hardly any wild rice on there, and it was a huge foraging thing. So we have put out some of these exclosure pens, like people have seen on the tundra for snow geese, to see what impact those birds are having on wild rice, to help us make kind of some future decisions on exactly what we want to do. And again, the tribes they helped us purchase a couple of those collars, so we were somewhat obligated to try to figure out and help answer some of these questions. So with that, again, I want to thank the DNR folks. We had a ton of staff and volunteers, Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, Trumpeter Swan Society, because I've been getting emails from Margaret on ideas or where 1P is, where 2P is, where 3P, 4P, all these birds. So these have been great to keep track of them as they've gone over the last couple of years. And then Dave Wilson, Dave Anderson at the University of Minnesota. So with that, I'm willing to take some questions.